They had been married for 13 years, Emma and Daniel. To outsiders, they seemed like a stable, quiet couple, no drama, no scandal, just two people growing older together. But inside the walls of their suburban home, the silence had become unbearable. The kind of silence that wasn't peaceful, but hollow. Conversations had become routine. The spark that once lit their nights was now reduced to polite good nights and unspoken disappointments. Emma noticed it first, or at least she admitted it first. The lack of touch, the fading intimacy, the absence of desire. Daniel had grown distant. He no longer looked at her the way he used to. No more spontaneous kisses in the kitchen, no more lingering glances when she got dressed for bed. She felt invisible. And when a woman starts to feel unseen by the man who once adored her, the mind begins to wander. She tried to reignite things. She booked a weekend away for the two of them, suggested couples activities, even bought new lingerie. Daniel appreciated the effort, smiled gently, but never truly responded. There was always an excuse: work stress, headaches, fatigue. At night, he often sat alone on the back porch, staring into the dark yard with a glass of scotch in his hand. Emma started to wonder, was there someone else? Was he having an affair? The idea seemed crazy at first. Daniel had always been loyal, reliable. But now that very reliability felt suspicious. He guarded his phone. He stayed late at the office. He avoided intimacy. She began watching him more closely, noticing the small lies, and the paranoia took root. What she didn't know, what she couldn't have imagined, was the truth. Daniel was dying. A rare degenerative illness, slow but certain. The kind of disease that doesn't offer second chances. The doctors gave him a year, maybe less. He had sat in that cold hospital room, listening to a calm voice explain the science behind his ending. He had nodded quietly, thanked the doctor, and walked out into the world like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. He chose not to tell Emma, not because he didn't love her, but because he did. He didn't want their final year to be filled with pity. He didn't want her to see him as a dying man, to spend their remaining days counting down to the inevitable. So he pretended. He smiled. He worked. And slowly, without meaning to, he began pulling away. Not out of disinterest, but out of love. He wanted her to begin detaching, to start learning how to live without him. He wanted the transition to be easier, but in doing so, he made it worse. Emma, convinced he had stopped loving her, began spiraling. She confided in her friend Megan, who listened and offered vague reassurances. But even Megan seemed hesitant. Maybe she too saw the signs. Emma became obsessed with finding out the truth. She checked his messages when he showered. She followed him once after work. She even called his office pretending to be someone else. She never found anything. No hotel receipts, no lipstick-stained collars, no proof. But the absence of evidence only fed her suspicion. He's too careful, she told herself. He's hiding it well. Then she met Alex. Alex was a consultant who had joined her firm a month earlier. Tall, charming, funny in a disarming kind of way. He was kind without trying too hard. And most importantly, he noticed her, complimented her, made her feel seen. For the first time in years, Emma felt wanted again. It began with coffee, then lunch, then late nights working on presentations. The connection built quietly, steadily, until it was undeniable. Emma told herself it was innocent, that she just needed a friend. But when Alex brushed her hand one evening, and she didn't pull away, she knew it had already gone too far. Daniel noticed the change. She smiled more, dressed differently, checked her phone constantly. But he said nothing. Part of him was glad. Maybe she had found someone who could care for her when he was gone. Maybe this was how it was meant to be. A twisted mercy. Emma, in turn, noticed that Daniel had stopped asking where she was going. He no longer checked in. He didn't seem to care. That only drove her deeper into Alex's arms point one night. She didn't come home until after midnight. Her lipstick was smudged, her perfume stronger than usual. Daniel was sitting on the porch again, the scotch in his hand trembling slightly. She walked past him without a word. He looked at her but said nothing. Inside, his heart cracked a little more. He wanted to tell her, wanted to scream the truth. That he wasn't cheating, that he was dying. That every second he looked at her, He was memorizing her face for when the darkness came. But the words caught in his throat, trapped behind fear and guilt and love. The next morning, Emma found him in the shower, sitting on the floor, eyes red. He claimed he had just been tired. She didn't press. She had stopped pressing. They were both living in parallel lies. Emma was convincing herself that she deserved happiness, even if it came from someone else. Daniel was convincing himself that love meant letting go, even if it hurt like hell. The tragedy was that they both still loved each other deeply, but love kept in silence becomes invisible, and invisible things are often mistaken for dead. Emma never thought she'd be the type of woman who cheated. She had always viewed infidelity with disgust, saw it as the ultimate betrayal. But when she looked at her life now, when she traced back the months of emotional neglect, the countless nights spent wondering why she wasn't enough anymore, she found ways to justify it. It wasn't about lust. It was about feeling alive again. Alex was everything Daniel used to be. Attentive, playful, passionate. He listened when she talked, asked how her day had been, noticed when she changed her hair. He made her feel like a woman again, not just a wife, not just someone to come home to. When they touched, it wasn't just physical. It was validating at first. She tried to resist. Told herself it was just a harmless distraction, a coping mechanism. But the more Daniel withdrew, the more Emma fell into the comfort of Alex's arms. It became a full affair. Hotels during lunch breaks, late evening walks that ended in his apartment, passionate weekends away under the excuse of corporate retreats. And still, Daniel said nothing. His silence only pushed Emma further. She mistook his quiet pain for indifference. What she couldn't see was the nightly routine he had built around dying in secret. The doctor visits, the hidden medications, the subtle adjustments to their home, rails in the shower, softer lighting, life insurance quietly updated. He had begun writing letters to her, letters she wouldn't see until after. Some were confessions, some were memories, some were just apologies. He knew she would hate herself when she learned the truth. And so he tried, in writing, to forgive her in advance. The irony was unbearable. That he was letting her drift toward another man so she wouldn't be alone when he was gone. That she was drifting because she believed he already didn't love her anymore. Two hearts still beating for each other, but out of sync, like a tragic duet sung in different keys. Emma noticed something was off eventually. Not emotionally, physically. Daniel had lost weight. His color was off. He seemed slower, more tired. She asked once if he was okay. He smiled, kissed her forehead, and said he was just aging. She let it go. Alex began pushing for more. He wanted commitment. He wanted her to leave Daniel. He said he was in love with her and tired of being the other man. Emma didn't know how to respond. She wasn't ready for that. She wanted the thrill, the attention, but not the consequences. She hadn't stopped loving Daniel. She just didn't feel loved by him anymore. One night, as she lay in bed beside Daniel, wide awake, she stared at his profile in the dark. He looked peaceful, but there was something haunted in his sleep. His fingers twitched. His breathing was shallow. She watched him for hours, tears quietly falling onto the pillow. She didn't know why she was crying. The following week, Daniel collapsed at work. He passed out in the conference room, mid-sentence. Colleagues rushed to help. An ambulance was called. Emma got the call during a meeting with Alex. At the hospital, everything unraveled. The diagnosis, the prognosis. The fact that Daniel had known for half a year and told no one. Emma sat frozen in the sterile waiting room, the doctor's words echoing in her ears like thunder underwater. She couldn't breathe. When she entered his room, he was awake, hooked up to IVs, pale but smiling. "I didn't want you to worry," he whispered. Emma broke. Everything crashed into her. The affair, the suspicions, the anger, the guilt, the unbearable love. She fell to the floor beside his bed and wept like a child. He reached for her hand, held it tightly. "I wanted to spare you," he said. "I thought, if you hated me, it'd be easier when I was gone." "You idiot," she choked out. "You beautiful, stupid, selfless idiot." She confessed everything. She told him how lost she had been, how invisible she had felt. She expected rage, judgment, condemnation. Instead, he just nodded slowly. "I know," he whispered. I saw it. I didn't stop you because I wanted you to have someone. No, she said, shaking her head violently. No, I don't want someone else. I want you. I wanted you the whole time. They cried together. 4 hours. For the life they had and the time they lost pretending they didn't care when they did. Alex texted, called. Emma ignored it all. The following months were a blur of hospital visits, home hospice preparations, and rediscovery. Emma became Daniel's full-time caregiver. But more than that, she became his wife again. Not out of obligation, but out of renewed love. They talked, laughed, watched old movies, danced slowly in the living room even when he could barely stand. They relived their honeymoon through photo albums, made new memories knowing they would be the last. Daniel's body weakened, but his spirit glowed. He had no regrets now. He had Emma back. And Emma? She forgave herself, but only after Daniel did. Her heart broke daily, knowing what was coming. But for the first time in years, she was no longer alone. They stopped hiding from each other, from the truth. Because when death knocks, it's not secrets that matter. It's the love you get to say out loud before the silence returns for good. The final months became both a countdown and a gift. Daniel had accepted his fate long ago, but for Emma, the knowledge of the inevitable became both a source of grief and clarity. Every moment they shared now was colored with urgency. Every breakfast, every smile, every time he reached for her hand, these were now sacred rituals. She memorized the shape of his fingers, the way his voice cracked in the morning, the way his eyes still searched for hers across a room even when his vision was fading. Their bedroom changed. No longer a space of silence and tension, it transformed into a sanctuary. Medications lined one side, soft lights on dimmers, oxygen tanks humming quietly in the corner. And in the middle of it all, Daniel, still smiling, still cracking jokes when he had the energy, still trying to make her feel okay. She often asked him if he was scared. He would shake his head. "I'm not afraid to die," he'd say. "I'm just afraid of you being alone." But Emma wasn't alone anymore. Not really. She was surrounded by the weight of everything they had built, their memories, their bond, their mistakes, their forgiveness. It all created something stronger than fear. They stopped talking about the past and stopped making plans for a future that wouldn't come. Instead, they focused entirely on now. They spent hours watching old home videos, laughing at how young and stupid they had been. Daniel dictated stories he wanted her to remember, some real, some exaggerated for affect. Emma wrote them all down in a notebook titled "When You Miss Me." She took leave from work. Alex faded into the background like a bad dream. At first, he tried to reach out, to make her explain, but she had no explanations left for him. No space in her heart anymore for things that didn't matter. He eventually gave up. She didn't miss him. Daniel's health declined quickly. There were days he couldn't get out of bed, days when he was confused, weak, in pain. But even then, he tried to smile for her. Emma never left his side. She fed him, bathed him, talked to him, even when he couldn't answer back. One morning, as the autumn leaves turned gold outside their window, Daniel whispered, "You've made this the best year of my life." Emma laughed and cried at the same time. "You're insane," she said. "You've been dying." He shook his head slightly. "No," he murmured. "I've been living." And he meant it. Because love, when stripped of pride and fear, becomes something eternal, something pure, something worth suffering for. He died 2 weeks later, peacefully in his sleep. Emma was holding his hand. She woke up just as his last breath slipped into the quiet. The house didn't feel empty. It felt full of him. The days after were unbearable, but she moved through them with quiet grace. She organized the funeral, read one of his letters aloud to a crowd of friends and family. People cried, smiled, remembered. She buried him in the old cemetery on a hill he used to walk her to when they first dated. He always said it had the best view of the city. Now, he'd watch it forever. Afterward, Emma returned home to an impossibly silent house. She walked room to room, touching the things he touched. His sweater still on the back of the chair, his book unfinished, the cup he always used still drying in the rack. She opened the box of letters he left her, one for each month after his death. Some short, some long, some funny, some poetic, some just one sentence long. Don't forget to laugh today. She read the first one out loud through tears. In the weeks that followed, she went back to work. She started therapy. She joined a grief group. But she also started cooking again. Music returned to the house. She printed their photos, bought new sheets, adopted a dog from the shelter Daniel once volunteered at, because that's what Daniel wanted. And she told his story to anyone who would listen, not to confess her guilt or be pitied, but to remind people sometimes we love people wrong before we learn how to love them right. Sometimes we lose before we understand what we had. And sometimes the ones we think are pulling away are really just trying to protect us. Emma never married again, but she wasn't alone. She carried Daniel with her, in her memories, in her growth, in her ability to forgive herself. The world kept moving. Time didn't stop for her grief, but she moved with it, not against it. And every time autumn came, she'd walk to that hilltop cemetery, sit beside his grave with a thermos of coffee and a letter. She'd talk to him as if he were still there, because in the ways that mattered, he was. Her story wasn't perfect. It was full of pain, betrayal, regret. But it was also full of healing, truth, and the love that didn't die when the body did. Because some goodbyes are really just reminders to hold on tighter while you can.